May 1941. The North Atlantic stretched endlessly, a cold, gray expanse where waves rose like mountains, and wind tore across the deck with a bite that could slice through the thickest gloves. Amid this tumult, the Bismarck moved with a sense of inevitability, a leviathan of steel and fire that embodied the raw power of the Kriegsmarine. At 827 feet long, with a beam of 118 feet and a displacement exceeding 50,000 tons fully loaded, she was more than a ship. She was a floating fortress, a symbol of German naval supremacy, a ghost that haunted every convoy and patrol in the Atlantic. From the moment she was commissioned in August 1940, Bismarck had captured imaginations and fears alike. Admirals whispered of her 15-inch main guns, capable of firing 1,760-pound shells over 20 miles, flattening anything foolish enough to cross her path. Her secondary armament bristled with 5.9-inch guns, anti-aircraft batteries, and a network of armor plating so dense that early reports suggested no Allied ship could hope to penetrate it. The vessel's design, a marvel of engineering, married speed and firepower with what German engineers believed to be near invulnerability. In her heart, the Bismarck carried not just steel and fuel, but the confidence and pride of a nation determined to dominate the seas. On board, the crew shared a rare camaraderie forged by discipline and reverence for their floating fortress. Every sailor knew his station, every officer understood the vessel's capabilities, and every man believed in the myth. Bismarck was untouchable. Yet, beneath this pride lay a quiet tension. British intelligence was watching. Convoys crisscrossed the Atlantic, and rumors of a new German super battleship had spread like wildfire. Somewhere, far across the ocean, admirals of the Royal Navy were planning, calculating, waiting for the chance to engage this monster. The sea had a rhythm, and Bismarck moved in perfect harmony with it. Her turbines roared with a controlled fury, capable of propelling the ship at 30 knots, a speed matched by few battleships of her era. Her radar, still rudimentary by modern standards, scanned the horizon, detecting distant blips and signaling the presence of potential threats. To the Germans, the Atlantic was both a hunting ground and a stage. To the Allies, it was a trap waiting to be sprung. This is where our story begins, not with battle, not with explosions, but with the quiet, looming presence of a ship that the world believed invincible. The Bismarck was more than steel. She was confidence embodied, a rolling statement of power that no one dared challenge. Yet, the 18th of May 1941, the port of Gotenhafen stirred with activity under the gray sky of early morning. Along the docks, crews prepared their vessels for a voyage that would test the limits of seamanship, strategy, and courage. The Bismarck, accompanied by her escort, the heavy cruiser Prinz Eugen, was to undertake Operation Rheinübung, a daring sortie into the North Atlantic, aimed at disrupting the lifeline of Allied supply convoys that stretched from North America to Britain. Admiral Günther Lütjens, commanding officer of the Bismarck, exuded calm authority. His gaze swept across the deck as officers reported their readiness. Engines primed, turrets aligned, ammunition accounted for. Every detail had been checked, every sailor drilled. This was not merely a mission, it was a statement. Lütjens believed in the ship, in his crew, and in the doctrine that had guided German naval strategy for decades. A powerful battleship, operating with speed, precision, and surprise, could strike terror into the enemy. As the ship slipped past the fjords of Denmark and into the open North Sea, the scale of the operation became clear. The Atlantic was vast, a theater where the smallest miscalculation could spell disaster. Submarines prowled beneath the waves, aircraft scouted from above, and Allied surface ships hunted in invisible formations. Every hour carried risk. Every mile demanded vigilance. Bismarck's systems were a marvel. Her main battery, 8 15-inch guns mounted in 4 turrets, could engage multiple targets simultaneously, each round capable of obliterating a cruiser in a single hit. Her armor, up to 12 inches on the belt, wrapped around her hull like a protective shell. The vessel's speed allowed her to outmaneuver many potential threats, while her sophisticated fire control systems ensured that when she fired, her shots landed with deadly precision. The Germans believed that no combination of British ships could match such power in open combat. Yet, confidence is a fragile companion. While Bismarck's capabilities were unmatched, intelligence reports hinted at growing Allied awareness. The Royal Navy had begun monitoring her movements, intercepting communications, and tracking patterns of fuel usage and convoys. Small signs, easily dismissed by her officers as the predictable murmur of bureaucracy, would later prove to be early warnings. For now, the Bismarck pressed forward with relentless purpose, cutting through the Atlantic like a blade, carrying the pride of a nation and the weight of expectations. The first days of the voyage passed with routine precision. Crews rotated through drills, engines hummed with consistent rhythm, and the North Atlantic unfolded in endless waves of gray. Yet, beneath the surface, forces were converging. British ships were mobilizing, aircraft patrols were dispatched, and spies and codebreakers pieced together fragments of information that would soon form a trap. The Bismarck sailed not just into the Atlantic, but into the jaws of history, unaware of the storm that awaited her. The 24th of May, 1941. The North Atlantic lay shrouded in mist, waves crashing in endless gray rhythms. When radar blips signaled the presence of British warships on the horizon, Bismarck's crew felt a surge of anticipation finally, the moment to demonstrate their ship's might. Yet, what awaited them would soon test not just their steel and guns, but their nerves and the limits of human endurance. At 5:52 a.m., HMS Hood, Britain's pride and the largest battlecruiser in the world, appeared through the fog. At 860 feet long and displacing over 42,000 tons, Hood was formidable, a symbol of British naval power and a reminder that no battleship, however well armored, could claim invincibility on its own. Alongside Hood sailed HMS Prince of Wales, newly commissioned and bristling with fresh technology, though still untested in battle. Admiral Lutyens, confident yet cautious, ordered Bismarck's guns to bear. The main battery roared to life, massive shells arcing through the mist with terrifying precision. Every salvo was calculated, every turret a mechanism of destruction honed to lethal efficiency. Prince Eugene followed, her guns adding to the symphony of fire that tore through the morning haze. The exchange was brief but decisive. Hood, despite her legendary speed and firepower, proved vulnerable against Bismarck's concentrated assault. A single 15-inch shell struck the ship's magazine, and in an instant, Hood erupted in a catastrophic explosion, sending her crew of 1,418 men to the depths in a matter of seconds. The shock reverberated through the Atlantic. Bismarck had delivered a crushing blow, but the victory was tempered by the realization that the entire Royal Navy would now converge to hunt her down. Prince Eugen's gunners fired in unison, providing covering fire as Bismarck maneuvered through the rough waters. Smoke and flame mixed with the cold Atlantic mist, creating a surreal tableau of steel and chaos. On board Bismarck, the crew felt a mixture of triumph and foreboding. They had destroyed Britain's mightiest battlecruiser, yet in doing so, they had painted a target on themselves. The hunt was about to begin. With the sinking of Hood, British command mobilized a response that would stretch across hundreds of miles of the North Atlantic. Every available ship, from battleships to cruisers to destroyers, set sail in pursuit. Aircraft from distant carriers took to the skies, searching for any trace of the formidable Bismarck. Signals intelligence units intercepted German communications, piecing together movements with painstaking accuracy. The tide of history had shifted from preparation to pursuit. Bismarck, aware of the growing threat, attempted evasive maneuvers. Speed became her ally, with turbines pushing her toward the Atlantic's midsection at 27 to 30 knots, a remarkable pace for a vessel of her size. Yet fuel constraints loomed large. The ship could not outrun an organized fleet indefinitely. Every mile covered, every wave braved, brought the crew closer to a confrontation that would test their courage, their skill, and the limits of their floating fortress. British admirals, including Sir Dudley Pound and Vice Admiral Lancelot Holland, coordinated relentless pursuit. Intelligence reports were transmitted across a vast network, ships converging from all directions. Bismarck's very invincibility, which had instilled confidence in her crew, now attracted the full attention of a navy determined to neutralize the threat. Every radar ping, every lookout's observation, was scrutinized. The trap was being set. Slowly, but with inexorable precision. For the crew, tension mounted with each passing hour. Drills became constant, eyes scanning the horizon for the telltale glint of British ships or aircraft. Torpedoes, mines, and naval gunfire were ever-present threats. Bismarck was a predator, but now she had become the hunted. Officers relied on calculated maneuvers, using smoke screens and zigzag courses, pushing the ship to the limits of design. The Atlantic, once a stage for her dominance, had transformed into a theater of survival. Amid this strategic dance, the human element revealed itself. Sailors, some barely 20 years old, faced fear they had never known. Officers issued commands with precision, gunners maintained readiness under stress, and the collective discipline of the crew became the linchpin of survival. Every action mattered, for in this cat-and-mouse game, a single miscalculation could mean disaster. And yet, through it all, the Bismarck moved with a sense of purpose, every knot of speed and turn of her rudder, a testament to engineering, training, and the resolve of men who believed in their ship's indestructibility. By the 25th of May, 1941, the Bismarck's initial triumph had transformed into a grueling survival test. The vast expanse of the North Atlantic seemed almost conspiratorial. Waves relentlessly battered her hull, and fog hung low like a shroud, masking dangers that could emerge at any moment. British cruisers and destroyers, relentless and coordinated, shadowed her every move, probing for weaknesses. The reality was unavoidable. No ship, no matter how powerful, could withstand a combined, persistent assault from an entire navy. On board Bismarck, the tension was palpable. Officers pored over charts and logs, calculating distances, fuel consumption, and potential escape routes. Each radar report and lookout sighting demanded immediate response. The ship's guns, once symbols of absolute dominance, now waited silently, ready but constrained by the vast distances to pursuing ships. Even Bismarck's armor, legendary for deflecting enemy fire, offered little comfort against coordinated attacks that could come from the air, sea, or both. The psychological toll on the crew was severe. Sailors accustomed to routine found themselves in a state of continuous alert. Sleep was scarce, meals hurried, and every routine maintenance task became a reminder of vulnerability. Confidence in their invincibility, once a source of pride, began to feel fragile under the weight of relentless pursuit. In these hours, the Atlantic revealed its dual nature. Awe-inspiring in scale, yet unforgiving in its capacity to isolate even the mightiest vessel. Meanwhile, British command orchestrated a complex net of forces. Aircraft from the carrier HMS Royal took to the skies, searching relentlessly. Spotter planes scoured the horizon for signs of Bismarck's massive superstructure, relaying coordinates with meticulous accuracy. The Royal Navy's ability to project both ship and air power simultaneously was unprecedented, a technological and strategic orchestration that Bismarck's crew could scarcely counter. Each sighting, each maneuver, was a test of endurance, judgment, and faith in steel. It was on the 26th of May, 1941, that a new and unexpected threat emerged, one that would forever alter the course of Bismarck's fate. At first glance, the Fairey Swordfish seemed almost laughable, a relic of an earlier era of naval aviation. A slow, fabric-covered biplane, with its awkward frame and seemingly outdated technology. It was dismissed by many as a nuisance rather than a weapon of strategic consequence. Yet appearances, as history would soon prove, were dangerously deceiving. HMS Royal launched a squadron of swordfish bombers. each piloted by men whose determination outmatched the limitations of their aircraft. Their mission: to cripple Bismarck's rudder and deny her the ability to maneuver. For the German crew, spotting these lumbering planes seemed almost comical. How could such fragile machines threaten a 42,000-ton battleship, floating fortress of steel and firepower? The irony was sharp. Almost cruel history often favors the unexpected. The Swordfish approached under the cover of clouds and the mist that clung stubbornly to the Atlantic. Their pilots had trained rigorously, mastering low-altitude torpedo attacks and navigation under immense pressure. At 1,500 feet, they were invisible to the naked eye until the final moments. Then, with terrifying precision, torpedoes were released, cutting through the water toward their target. The first hits were glancing, absorbed by Bismarck's massive hull, but the impact was enough to disrupt the ship's equilibrium and alert every sailor to the peril they had previously dismissed. Within minutes, the reality sank in. These slow, antiquated biplanes had delivered a blow that modern naval artillery and battleship armor could not easily mitigate. Bismarck's rudder, critical for maneuvering, was compromised, and the once unassailable vessel was now constrained, her movements restricted to the cruel arithmetic of physics and hydrodynamics. Officers barked orders, attempting to counter the damage, but the full extent of the threat was undeniable. The Swordfish, seemingly minor in comparison to Bismarck's might, had become the instrument of strategic transformation. From this moment, the hunt was no longer a contest of raw firepower, but of vulnerability versus opportunity. The Atlantic, once the stage for Bismarck's dominion, had become a theater in which ingenuity, timing, and the element of surprise dictated survival. For the German crew, the lesson was bitter yet clear. Underestimating the unconventional, dismissing the unexpected, can unravel even the greatest of machines. By the early hours of the 27th of May 1941, the Bismarck was no longer the untouchable colossus that had once dominated the Atlantic. Damage to her rudder had left her maneuvering capabilities severely restricted, and the relentless pressure from the Royal Navy's forces grew more suffocating with every hour. British battleships, cruisers, and destroyers closed the net, while aircraft from HMS Royal maintained constant surveillance, ensuring that the Germans could not escape unnoticed. On board, chaos and discipline collided. Crew members raced across decks, slick with seawater, performing emergency repairs, while the looming threat of torpedoes and artillery shells hung over every action. The guns that had once symbolized invincibility now operated under constraints, firing from a ship that could no longer direct itself with precision. Officers shouted orders, but every maneuver required consideration of the crippling damage to the rudder. The Atlantic, vast and indifferent, had transformed into a trap where even the mightiest ship could be rendered helpless. Meanwhile, the British exploited every advantage. Signals intelligence and aerial reconnaissance allowed Admiral Tovey to orchestrate an encirclement with surgical precision. The Bismarck's compromised state meant that speed and positioning, previously her defensive strengths, were now liabilities. Each passing hour narrowed the possibilities of escape. The Atlantic, which had once served as a stage for her dominance, had become a cage. Even the crew's legendary discipline could not negate the growing inevitability of confrontation. Amid the tension, the psychological strain on the crew intensified. Fatigue, fear, and the realization of vulnerability gnawed at even the most seasoned sailors. For all the technical brilliance and firepower aboard Bismarck, a single moment of strategic oversight, a misjudgment of the Swordfish's threat, had irrevocably altered their fate. In naval warfare, as in life, the smallest overlooked variable can cascade into catastrophe. It was mid-morning when the culmination of days of pursuit and calculated strategy reached its climax. British battleships, including HMS King George V and HMS Rodney, opened fire with everything they had. Shells tore through the Atlantic mist and struck Bismarck with devastating precision. Her guns fired back, but with limited maneuverability. Each salvo was a desperate attempt rather than a calculated offensive. The ship that had inspired awe now endured relentless bombardment. Above, the Swordfish returned to finish what they had begun. Torpedoes, released from those seemingly fragile biplanes, exploited the rudder damage and prevented any meaningful evasive maneuvers. Each hit, each glancing blow, reminded the crew that technology and tactics could outweigh raw strength. By early afternoon, Bismarck was dead in the water, her engines failing, her superstructure scarred, and her crew facing the grim reality of surrender or death. The sinking of Bismarck, while tactically a British victory, represented a strategic lesson that would echo throughout naval history. A ship's armor, armament, and sheer size, once considered invincible, were rendered secondary to adaptability, coordination, and the audacious use of seemingly outdated technology. The Fairey Swordfish, a relic of a previous era, had rewritten the narrative. In warfare, ingenuity and timing can defeat brute force. In the aftermath, naval tacticians and historians dissected the engagement, recognizing how a combination of strategic foresight, coordinated naval and aerial action, and the daring employment of the unexpected could determine outcomes against even the most formidable opponents. The Bismarck, once a symbol of naval supremacy, became a cautionary tale, a testament to the power of innovation, the importance of reconnaissance, and the relentless truth that no fortress, no matter how imposing, can survive if its vulnerabilities are exposed at the right moment. Through the loss of Bismarck, the Royal Navy demonstrated not just dominance at sea, but mastery of strategic orchestration. The biplanes that seemed laughable became the instruments of history, proving that courage, precision, and a refusal to underestimate the underdog could topple even the most feared giants. The Atlantic remembered that day, and the world learned a lesson. In warfare, perception can be deceiving, and the improbable often becomes decisive.